Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Those of you that can find me despite YouTube throttling this channel down like never before seen. You'll remember back on January 22nd, they announced they were changing their algos to filter out misinformation. Well, guys, you tell me if this interview with my friend Bob Kudla, the founder of Trade Genius, is misinformation. In fact, I would argue it's the exact opposite. It's very important information you're unlikely to get from CNBC and the Mockingbird mainstream medias at CNN, the Washington Post, and the New York Times. Bob, welcome back.
Hey, Sean, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming back on. And guys, I am back from my trip in Seattle. Thank you so much for your support. The family situation is stabilized, and I may well share that story in the future. So many of us battle against family issues, some of which are vaccine related, some of which are opioid related. Everybody has a cross to bear. Our problems are not opioid related, but you get the point. Bob, it feels like we're all under multifaceted attack in this country. If it's not chemtrails or geoengineering, it's poison in the vaccines or God knows what. Now our monetary system is under attack. We have Trump trying to wage a tariff war against China. Mike Maloney is warning that that's going to lead to hyperinflation and very bad things for the economy. You think that Trump is checkmating the bankers, China, and Democrats, and I tend to agree with you to some extent on that, but maybe we should start with tariffs. Is this thing going to lead to the implosion of the U.S. economy if it keeps up?
Absolutely not. I think people draw simple conclusions to everything. So they saw what happened at the Great Depression. They heard about tariffs, and they heard that America just went into a steep dive. What they don't tell you is that the United States was a lot like China is today, and we're a lot like Great Britain is today. Great Britain went through the Great Depression with very little impact because they were the empire of the day. They had the deficits for trade. They had the deficits for fiscal. And then what they did was they brought everything back inside their empire, and countries like the United States suffered as a result. Well, that's the same thing happening now. The people that are going to really feel the impact of this is going to be China, Japan, Germany, and to a lesser extent like Korea and nations like that. So what's going to happen here in the United States is that we're going to probably get some inflation, but that inflation is going to just translate into people getting more jobs, and wages are going to go up at the same time. And one other thing people don't realize is that only 14% of our GDP is trade related. So we're relatively immune to this, where China is 45 to 50%, Germany's 40%, Japan is 50%. Those countries are going to get crushed. And so for our standpoint is, look, we're going to get a little bit of inflation out of this, and it's probably in the scheme of things a good thing, because we're really fighting deflation right now. So I don't agree with that assessment at all. I think people are drawing the wrong conclusions from history.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll keep our eye on that story. And one thing that needs to be said, though, Bob, is that pretty much as soon as this tariff war kicked off in earnest, China started retaliating by saying, you'll recall this too, it was on May 13th, market tumbles as China strikes back, saying they may dump some treasuries. And the reaction on a global scale was Bitcoin's resurgence. Bitcoin has been on absolute fire. In a second, I'm going to play a very amusing soundbite, a very telling soundbite for you from Brad Sherman, of course, a Democrat from California. Only such nonsense could come from a Democrat from California. We'll get to that soundbite in a second, but your thoughts on Bitcoin. Is it the canary in the coal mine that tells us, first of all fiat currencies on this planet are eventually dead men walking? And number two, people around the globe are seeing this trade war, and they're reacting by getting out of the yuan, out of the dollar, and into some other metric of wealth protection, in this case, Bitcoin and cryptos.
Yeah, we saw this coming, and I sent you over a few charts. Is that we've been pounding the table on Bitcoin for the last 6 months, even before this move even started, and Bitcoin's up over 100%. Litecoin is up 400% since we recommended it, and we think there's a double in both of those still yet to come, and the reason being is you nailed it, right on the head, Sean, is that China, look, these people have very few options to get the money out of the country. Hong Kong reported yesterday the capital flight is accelerating over there people are trying to get out. And the reason why they're trying to get out is the Chinese are going to devalue their yuan. And so they only really have the quickest way out of the country is to buy cryptos. And people don't realize the Chinese still own the most Bitcoin on earth. And when they start buying, the market starts to really move, and they're getting out of fiat. China's first. Europe's already been buying Bitcoin. Germany's going into negative rates. Italy's ready to implode. Turkey has already imploded. And so look, people have got to get out of the banking system, and there's only one place to get out of the banking system completely and still be able to move your money around, and that's cryptocurrencies. Then obviously, the emperor is gold, and people will be moving their money into that as well.
The interesting thing about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin specifically, we've talked about this many times in the past, and I've made the statement in the past that folks might want to consider taking a flyer on Bitcoin and Litecoin and some of these others just as a gamble in the portfolio. If you threw 1% of your net worth at it, it may pay off in a big, big way that you didn't imagine. And what I keep coming back to, Bob, and this is despite talking to really smart guys that I know in the space, guys like Kent Lewis, who developed freedom.social, big crypto guy, really smart when it comes to blockchain. He's made the argument that Bitcoin may be controlled ultimately by the elite banksters. I don't know for sure if that's true, but the bottom line is this. With only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be in existence, right now there's 17 million. We're coming up on this halving, which means that the miners of Bitcoin, their reward for mining this stuff is going to be halved in about a year. We look at the charts, Bitcoin always runs into the halving and explodes for about a year after the halving. So what I want people to understand as they listen to this, regardless of who owns Bitcoin, you, dear listener, people that we love, SGT Report and Trade Genius listeners and subscribers, think about your future. Think about your family. What happens when 1 billion people in China get interested in Bitcoin? Or even the well-heeled 1%, 10 million people in China get interested in Bitcoin? What happens when people in America, in the EU, start to wake up? There's only 17 million Bitcoin out there right now, Bob. So to me, as I'm hearing so many of these excited pundits, these former Bitcoin bulls that are back on the bandwagon talk about $100,000 Bitcoin, it's very easy to see how that could happen given the very limited supply. In a second, after I get your response, I will play this absurd soundbite from Brad Sherman about wanting to ban Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But your thought on what Bitcoin could do with a total supply that will ever be minted of 21 million versus a fiat printing press where they will just print dollars in perpetuity.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, look at Litecoin. Litecoin went up 5x. By the time this is done, Litecoin's going to go from $20 to about 175 is our target. That's an 8x move. You put that multiple on Bitcoin sitting at 4,000 when it started its halving move. You're looking at $32,000, and these things are not outrageous when you consider how much fiat is being pumped into the system right now to keep the patient alive. And people are going to bail out of the banking system, and this is the only place for them to go. And I agree with you. We don't tell people to put 100% of your money in crypto. Like 10% in gold, silver, 5% in crypto. You're gonna be really happy. I just printed a chart this morning that showed that the Dow Jones for the last 18 months has gone nowhere, and it had 2 steep drops to scare the children. So. And we're coming up on the third one. They're doing everything they can to keep the pig afloat. And once people realize they're not going to be able to do it, they're going to run to these safe havens. And for most people, it's going to be too late. People are going to jump on this thing late again. And so we've just been begging people, look, you need to have exposure to these cryptos, and you need to have exposure to gold, silver, and the miners, and the other things that are going to be bought up as hard assets versus the fiat.
Yeah, and guys, again, just to be really clear, I'm not a crypto proselytizer, okay? I'm just a realist. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not advising you to buy or sell or trade in any securities. I'm not a financial advisor. You got to do your own due diligence. I'm just trying to be pragmatic, and I'm trying to be realistic. And if the whole world gets interested in cryptos again, these things are going to go up. Unfortunately, Bob, a lot higher and a lot faster than precious metals, gold and silver, because those assets are capped by banker paper. And I don't think the bankers have figured out a way yet to cap cryptos in perpetuity like they have silver and gold. Do you? Like, I think Bitcoin is manipulated. I mean, they came out with the Bitcoin futures back in December of a couple of years ago. You remember that was the beginning of the end. It went from 20,000 down to like 3,200 over the course of 18 months, 24 months. Maybe futures had something to do with that. But the point is, if it is manipulated to go lower, they can manipulate it to take it right up to 100,000 too.
Yeah, look, I think the demand's overwhelming the supply. The Chinese came in and just blew away the short sellers in the futures market. And look, gold and silver, I agree with you. Silver's probably going to go up 4 to 5x during this move. Gold will probably double, but it's really the gold and silver miners that have the leverage. And you just have to look back to 2011 and before that, early 2000, where you had these 6, 8x moves in these miners. You got to realize JP Morgan is the largest holder of silver in the world. When Jamie Dimon determines that he has enough silver, he'll flip the switch and you're going to watch silver and gold rocket. The bankers are allowed now to hold that silver and gold as tier one assets. And at some point it's going to be in their best interest to be buyers versus sellers. And look, the central banks have not stopped buying gold. And so when they all feel they have enough, they'll stop whacking on the weak longs on this. And then again, we're going to wake up one day just like cryptos, and people are going to be like, well, what happened? Why is it doubled? What happened here? And you got to be prepared ahead of time, and you need to be exposed to it. And I think, we're at the end game now. Look, President Trump is doing some really clever things here, and he's going to move right out of this trade battle right into the stimulus. And when he does that, he's going to spend money like it's nobody's business. They're already talking about this MMT, this monetary money thing that they talk about, where they say deficits don't matter. Well, when that happens, you're going to see the price of anything that's a hard asset rocket as they rebuild this economy with a $1 or $2 trillion. Look, the Democrats are already on board with this. They're looking for a way to pay for it. The way they're going to pay for it is Trump's not going to get rid of these China tariffs. He's going to use these tariffs to pay for the stimulus. And he's going to walk around and say, look, I told you guys, China's paying for this, guys. Mexico's paying for this. Even though it's a tax, people are just going to see where it's coming from, and they're going to see all these jobs. So it's really a clever move, and he's going to force the hand of the Fed at the same time. He's going to say, look, we need to match China's devaluation with lower interest rates. So he's just getting everything he wants out of this battle, and he's playing it pretty well, despite all the noise.
Well, I do worry, though, just to play devil's advocate and to go back to what Mike Maloney was saying. He said these trade wars often end up in shooting wars. That's where they can ultimately lead if the trade war continues, tit for tat in perpetuity. And I think what I worry about is I hear you say China's going to pay. Actually, it's going to be we, the people, once again, that are going to pay with inflated prices, aren't we? I mean, our prices are going to go up for everything that we buy that comes from China anyway. Would you agree with Maloney to the extent that at some point, somebody has to put up the white flag? And at this point, we don't see China willing to put up a white flag.
Yeah, I guess I can agree to disagree with him. When somebody has a $500 billion advantage, they're the ones that are going to feel the heat long before the person that has the deficit. And I'll also say too, I own a solar energy company. I've owned it for now almost 14 years. And we decided to never use Chinese panels. So we use panels from other countries that were 15 to 20% higher. I could never pass on that cost to my customer, because of retail prices. So our business ate the margin based on our moral, decision that we made to never use anything Chinese. And you're going to see a lot of that happening out there, where the companies, first of all, the Chinese manufacturers are going to eat some of this. The retailers are going to eat some of this, and then some of it will be passed on to the consumer. But at the end of the day, the consumer only has so much money. So either they're going to buy less, or or the people that are manufacturing and selling it are going to make less. Mm-hmm. And so there's a limit on how high this can go. The only way you get hyperinflation is if you start seeing the wage inflation start to step in with that. I just don't see that on the horizon. But that's what makes a market, Sean. Not everybody has to agree with the decision. It's just that I kind of lived it, And so I'm not quite as pessimistic as Mike may be.
Okay. No, that's great. I love the devil's advocate on that because you're right. The world's a big place, and we don't have to rely on just China to make stuff. We can make it ourselves. And of course, other countries will step up and fill that gap, hopefully. So, all right. I do like the fact that Trump doesn't just roll over and play dead. That's certainly what the witch would have done, and she would have outsourced the rest of what was left in this country in terms of manufacturing. So, all right, I just want to circle back to crypto and play this soundbite from Brad Sherman. Of course, guys, Brad Sherman, as you listen to this soundbite, Brad Sherman, a Democrat from California, of course. Who else could say what you're about to hear than a Democrat from California? As you listen to this soundbite about crypto, about Bitcoin specifically, I want you to think about those that say cryptos represent freedom, economic freedom outside of the SWIFT system, outside of the banker control, and it offers people a way to trade between themselves by bypassing all of that. And as you listen to Brad Sherman say what he's about to say, I want you to think about what the Democrats stand for. They want open borders, they want to take your guns, they want to limit your freedom, and Brad Sherman feels like this about cryptos. I want to give credit to Jerry Robinson over at Follow the Money. I posted this yesterday on my site, thephaser.com. Check this out.
I look for colleagues to join with me in introducing a bill to outlaw cryptocurrency purchases by Americans so that we nip this in the bud, in part because not an awful lot of our international power comes from the fact that the dollar is the standard unit of international finance and transactions. Clearing through the New York Fed is critical for major oil and other transactions. And it is the announced purpose of the supporters of cryptocurrency to take that power away from us, to put us in a position where the most significant sanctions we have on Iran, for example, would become irrelevant.
I wanted to play that for you, Bob, for just a couple of reasons. Number one, Brad Sherman is delusional. He's a Democrat. What do California Democrats do? They take what's not theirs in the name of government. They love to take your money via taxes and use it as their money, number one. Number two, what else does he want? He wants to take your freedom to protect yourself from inflation and keep you beholden to this system. And number three, what does he want to do? He wants to try to protect the petrodollar because, in his own words, that is what represents U.S. hegemony. Guess what, Bob? That ship has sailed. If Brad Sherman and the Democrats, if he could get enough support to pass a bill to ban cryptos, the rest of the world isn't going to ban cryptos. And guess what? In my view, Bob, China, the government of China, could listen to what Brad Sherman just said, and the government of China could actively get behind buying Bitcoin. If it scares Brad Sherman to this degree, then it's a weapon. Bitcoin could be weaponized by foreign governments in order to destroy the petrodollar further. This guy's out of his mind.
I'm surprised he openly said it. I mean, yeah, I think that's our Achilles heel. And look, like I said, the Chinese own a lot of Bitcoin. So, you know, they could just turn around and say, you know what, we like this as a transaction vehicle. We're not going to accept dollars anymore. So, you know, that's why with us running all these deficits, a problem. And, you know, this dollar standard is what allows the Democrats just to, you know, to print us into hell. And so, you know, I want to have a little bit of, you know, a guard against the unfettered power of the state. And, you know, cryptos gives that. And, you know, I think that ship has sailed on them. I agree with you that, look, India banned cryptos and their people are transacting. You have to shut the internet down to shut crypto down. And that's just not going to happen. So, you know, I think they're getting scared, Sean, and that's a good sign.
Yeah, I think they're getting scared too. And the reason, guys, here's the thing. I want to be really clear about this. The reason crypto is back in the news and Bitcoin is back in the news in this discussion on SGT report is because we are watching history unfold. Whether you like Bitcoin or hate it, whether you own Bitcoin or don't, Bitcoin is a story that needs to be told. And this is why, Bob. This is why Brad Sherman is afraid. They can cap silver at 15. They can cap gold at 1,300. But what would a $10,000 gold price say about the dollar? What would a $500 silver price say about the dollar? And what would a 100,000 or a 200,000 or a $1 million Bitcoin price say about the dollar?
Right. I'll say it's expendable. And the one thing too, I'll talk about gold and silver being capped. they've been capping palladium and platinum too. And earlier this year, they lost control of those markets because the demand overwhelmed the money changers, and quickly, palladium and platinum doubled. So that's how fast you can lose control if people decide to own and hold things. So I think they have too many fingers in the dike. I think they've been doing so much stuff to maintain this fantasy that any wrong move could see any of these asset classes just skyrocket. One thing we haven't talked about, Sean, and it's kind of a good thing, is that, look, they're trying to develop mineral supply chains within the United States. So you're talking about vanadium, cobalt, lithium, and they say uranium yet? All those are going to start getting import restrictions and starting to support processing and mineral development in the United States. And that's going to support all the prices that we see in those assets as well. And we've been following those too. So I think there's some really, really interesting things happening in the hard asset area that I think people can really take advantage of, that you can really make some really good money here on a go-forward basis. And I think this is all getting a blessing by President Trump. He's a nationalist, and I say that in a good way. And he wants things produced here, mined here, farmed here, processed here, and sold here. And all those things, if you're following the right trends, you're going to make a lot of money. And I think the people that are exporting to the United States are the ones that are going to be in a hurt locker. And I wouldn't worry too much about the farmers. Look at what happened now with the global solar minimum coming now. Is Australia, for the first time in 12 years, has to import wheat. They're the third or fourth largest exporter of wheat. They have to import wheat. And we're going to start seeing that happening to China too. China's Achilles heel is its ability to feed people. And you want to see leverage in a negotiation, not having enough food, and you're negotiating with Trump over trade. We'll see who wins that battle too. So there's so many things that are happening, Sean, out there right now. It makes my head spin, but it's just a sea of opportunity.
All right, guys, stick with us here, because in the next 10 or 15 minutes as we wrap this up, we're going to get Bob's thoughts on how he thinks Trump is checkmating the bankers. But I also want to talk how he's checkmating the Democrats. So we're going to talk about that. Bob, you mentioned uranium. So I want to just rewind a little bit. You made a lot of people a lot of money through Trade Genius. Every single day you send out alerts. One of the alerts I got on my phone was about a uranium play specifically. It would have never been on my radar had I not gotten that alert from you. So tell people about Trade Genius and how they can earn some money. I know that you offer deals for my viewers specifically.
Yeah, so what we do is we provide information and education, and then we provide a community forum for people to trade the cryptocurrencies. We trade some Forex, and then we also trade in the stock market. And so what we do is we offer trade signals like the ones that you receive, Sean, for cryptocurrencies and for equities. And then in addition to that, we have 2 trade rooms that are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, one for cryptocurrencies and one for trading the stock market. And then for those that are interested, we have education packages and we have personal coaching. So we wrap all that in together, and people can, whether you're a beginner, there's packages, and whether you're a more experienced trader, there's packages for you as well. And what we do for you, Sean, always is we run heavily discounted bundles that are available to your listeners if they go ahead and purchase them by Saturday this week. And they're just really good packages. So you can choose and pick between equities or cryptos. You can buy it all. We also put together our algorithm onto software from TradingView so that you could follow your own trades as well. So we really give people a complete package. We're doing really well. I mean, cryptos have been rocketing for the last 60 days. We were on the front end of that. Earlier this year, we were on the front end of the big miner push. And then we're going to rotate out of cryptos. We're going to rotate right back into the miners again, and just keep trying to make people money every single day. So thank you. TradeLikeAGenius.com. Check out the bundles, and they're available to you at discount till Saturday night.
All right, guys. And I'll just give you an example here on my phone here. I won't give you the ticker because you're going to have to go to Bob for that. But stock alert, buy at $2.67, stop is $2.40. The target is $4. It's that simple. So you go in, you set those, you buy it, you set your sell stop. So your bottom, your downside is very limited. And if you let it ride and it doesn't hit your sell stop, then maybe it hits $4 and you make some money. So that's how it works. At least for stocks, they also offer crypto alerts and binary options. Okay, so let me ask you this as we round out this conversation. Trump is checkmating the Democrats. I couldn't agree more. And when you say Democrats, I also have to throw the deep state in there. Now, of course, we all knew this, but Zero Hedge reminds us that both Comey and Brennan voted communist while the Cold War was raging. These people are traitors. They're traitors to the Constitution. They're traitors to the Bill of Rights. And they're literally traitors in their attempted coup against our sitting president. Let me ask you this. Right now, the FBI and the CIA are disputing whether or not Comey or Brennan pushed the Steele dossier, when we know, in fact, they both did. When we know, in fact, they knew that Christopher Steele was an unreliable witness, an unreliable person, and they used his information to get the FISA warrant, to go to the FISA court. We know who the real criminals are. We see it on the left, and the left continues to cover up for these deep state criminals. In your view, how is Trump checkmating the Democrats? And I guess I'd go a step further and say the deep state.
Yeah, so really interesting. First of all, I don't have his ability for patience. He let this whole thing play out, let the Democrats hang themselves on collusion and obstruction. And then his next really good move was bringing Bill Barr in as an attorney general, because he's really beyond dispute. Okay, his reputation just stands. And you saw the guy, he's brilliant, and he knows how to handle Congress. And his latest move, if you notice, the Democrats have completely shut up in Congress. You hear nothing about this anymore. The reason being, Attorney General Barr just appointed a prosecutor out of Connecticut. I forget his name off the top of my head. I sent you his article. Well, this guy has experience in investigating Bob Mueller. And this guy is going to investigate the beginnings, the origin of what prompted the FBI and the CIA to be so concerned about Trump manipulating the election through the acts of a foreign agency like Russia. And this guy is really smart guy, and the Democrats know that they're on thin ice here. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these congressmen being drawn in and dragged in to be interviewed on their role in this whole process. And so that's what's going to happen. And he's letting this all going to play out right when all these Democrats are going to try to, rein him in for the reelection. And Biden, he's toast. His son is knee deep in Ukraine as the senator was, or the vice president was. And his son's also been colluding with the Chinese for deals. And so I think all this stuff's going to just over, and the Democrats are going to be playing. They're going to be playing defense from now until the election. So I think he neutered them, just like he neutered Powell, and just like he's neutering the Chinese. And it takes somebody with some really, really strong internal fortitude to be able to do these things and push through a lot of heat. And I think right is on his side, and I think these things are all going to come back to haunt the Democrats. I just read this morning that there's handwritten notes that the FBI knew ahead of time that Hillary and her campaign were the source of these documents prior to going to the FISA court. So it's been put into evidence, and it's dated. So I think these guys know that the gig is up, or the jig is up, however you want to say it. And this prosecutor he's a pit bull. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what comes out over the next 6 to 9 months, but it's not good for the Democrats.
Yeah, I agree. And you say they've been neutered. Now we need to see them thrown in the slammer. So the name of the prosecutor is John Durham here. I've got got an article here from Politico. Well, the deep state is saying that everything they did was lawful and appropriate, and they did not spy. They actually are trying to say with a straight face that they did nothing wrong, when we know what they did was measures and measures and measures and measures degree worse than what happened with Watergate. What happened is we haven't seen sedition and treason like this in the wide open in our country, maybe ever. I think we all know that what went down on 9/11 was pretty darn bad, but that's all covered up. We're living through very, very incredible times in history. It's an incredible time to be alive, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're drinking from a fire hydrant right now in terms of just everything that's going on out there. So, I just hope everything comes to light, and our country can fight through this and come out the other side stronger and not be destroyed by it.
Yeah. Well, light is the best disinfectant. All right, Bob, thank you so much for your time today, and remind people how they can get involved with Trade Genius.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. TradeLikeAGenius.com. Check out the bundles, and we made the pricing available to everybody till Saturday night, midnight. Thanks again, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. I appreciate your time, and we'll talk again soon. And guys, thank you so much for your time. You know how much we appreciate it. A special shout out to my patrons. Thank you so much for filling the gap as YouTube really tries in earnest to destroy the SGT Report YouTube channel, and Google tries to destroy sgtreport.com by changing the algorithms and filtering us out from search results. Really appreciate you guys very much. God bless. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.
There's no doubt that we're on a blacklist and we're getting banned by Google in terms of anybody finding our websites